Hello and welcome to the Bit Beacon broadcast. It's episode 75 and it's March 3rd, 2025. Believe it or not, I do not have any new purchases this week. I don't know what happened. I screwed it big time, but don't worry. Next week, I promise you, I'll make up for it. I got a couple things on the way in the mail, so we'll talk about those then. For now, though, I wanted to talk about Visions of Mana. The game I've been playing for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And unfortunately, my time with the game ended on kind of a sour note. I got into the post-game content, defeated the extra secret bosses that you can only find once you've beaten the main boss from the main game. And one of the bosses you had to defeat on the hard level difficulty. Took me some tries figuring out some strategies to get that done, but eventually I did. And at that point, I only had a handful of trophy achievements left to pick up. And I found my way to the last couple trophies I needed for the game. And unfortunately, my game was glitched, I found out. One of the enemies that I needed to spawn in my game, a special nemesis enemy, basically it's a named monster that's stronger than your average everyday looking monster. And it would no longer appear in my game. And it turns out some people reported having a bug where if they didn't defeat that monster earlier on in the game and they made it to the post game with the clear data save file, you can no longer encounter that monster. And unfortunately, I didn't have an old save to roll back to. And even if I did, it would have meant replaying a dozen hours of content again at least just to get to that point. So after 60 hours, accomplishing absolutely everything the game has to offer, I can't fight that last enemy, which is just some joke monster at this point. You know, it'll die in like a couple hits of my sword. I can't get the platinum trophy unless I replay a 60-plus hour game. So I was pretty bummed. I'm not so bummed that, like, I'm totally put off the game, but it was just kind of a downer for sure. I did submit a bug request form to the company, Square Enix, the publisher. Unfortunately, the developer itself, Uka Studios, as I've talked about in previous weeks, is no longer in existence. So I don't know how feasible it is for Square Enix to get something like that looked at and fixed, which is rather unfortunate. But I got my save file. I got my, the game still installed. There ends up being an update at some point. I'll check in a few months. Maybe my issue will be resolved, and then I can hopefully get that platinum trophy. I am feeling a little burned by the whole experience, and I've been on sort of a trophy kick in recent months where I've been trying to get all the trophies for most of my games. And this one, I had it fully in my mind that, hey, I'm going to 100% this one. And now it's just like, no, you're not. So I don't know. I might be kind of taking a break from like the extreme trophy hunting for the time being and just playing games and not worrying about the trophies. We'll see though. My next game that I'm looking forward to playing, which I've got installed, is Sleeping Dogs. I believe I talked about that last week. So I'll, hopefully be talking more about that in next week's episode, touching on my early hours experience with that game. I have also been spending a bit of time with a DS game, an original DS game, and I'm talking about Animal Crossing Wild World on Nintendo DS, and I'm playing it on my DSi XL. What prompted me to start playing a 20-year-old Animal Crossing game? Great question. I have just been kind of hankering something like an old game. And the new Animal Crossing game, as amazing and incredible as it is on Nintendo Switch, there's just a little bit left to be desired, particularly from the villagers that live in the game, that live in your town, that live in your island. They're just not, they're too friendly, they're too nice. It's just always rainbows and sunshine and everything's nice and you're beautiful and all that stuff. And I missed something about the old games that was a little rougher around the edges. The animal villagers were maybe not as politically correct. They were kind of rude at times, and they ask you questions like, "Do I need to go on a diet?" You just don't see stuff like that anymore. And not that I'm like lamenting it or wishing people would ask me about their diet. It was just funny to see that stuff back then. And so yeah, I was just kind of like, let me just start a fresh save on this old game cartridge and check it out. It turns out I have 2 copies of the game. So, my original Animal Crossing Wild World town from back when I was in high school is still intact. But I wanted to try, starting over on a new one. And it's been nice. It's kind of become my bedtime game, like the 30-40 minutes before bed. Just walking around town, doing errands for the villagers and doing some fishing and stuff. And then it lulls me right to sleep. I'm really feeling it. I love it. So it's been fun to revisit Wild World. I did notice that Wild World is like completely devoid of traditional like holidays. For those of you that don't know, the Animal Crossing games happen in real time, meaning that like if it's 9 a.m. where you are, it's 9 a.m. in your game. And so there's a 24-hour clock, and the animals the villagers, I call them animals, but, they're anthropomorphic, standing on, 2 feet with 2 arms, that kind of a thing. They just got, like, animal heads and stuff on them. They're very cute looking. They are, doing their own thing. And so while you're not playing, the game is still sort of pseudo-playing in the background. And most Animal Crossing games have like holidays and major events and things that are kind of like take inspiration from the real world and are put into the video game one itself. Some games have more than others. Some of them used to have like actual real holidays. Nowadays they're more like inspired by kinds of holidays. But anyways, the one on DS, I looked up a calendar and there's like very few anything resembling really a holiday. There's some like events and things that go on in the game. But yeah, it's interesting that for whatever reason they're like, hey, let's take these out of the game. I don't know if it was we couldn't fit all of that data onto the DS cartridge back in the day. It is a really impressive game. Looking back at it, I'm still kind of surprised at how good it looks for 20 years old on the Nintendo DS. So anyways, yeah, I'm just playing on 10, 20, 30 minutes every day. And so yeah, I'm enjoying revisiting Wild World. So tomorrow, the tickets for the God of War 20th anniversary event at Gallery Nucleus go on sale. Happens to line up kind of nicely with my lunch break, so I will be hopefully picking those tickets up. I think I said there's only 130 or 160 tickets available. There was a slight update to the event. So the tickets to the panel and signing cost $15. Why? I don't know why. The panel never costs money. Sometimes the signing will cost money. But I don't really get it. Like they've been charging us to bring in external items at Gallery Nucleus, and it didn't have that listed initially. So I thought the $15 signing covered the 2 item limits. But now the page has been updated. So not only is it $15, I'll have to spend another $10 for the 2 personal items I bring in on that date as well. So the event's getting a little more and more expensive, which is kind of annoying. I really don't like that Gallery Nucleus is doing an outside item fee. It's a little silly if you ask me. But anyways, I still hope to be going to the event, so I'll report back next week if I got in or not. Fingers crossed. I usually do manage to get into these things, but I'm not the craziest God of War fan in the world. I've played a handful of games over the years, but there might be some people a little crazier than me that snatch those tickets before I do. Alright, I've got 2 things I want to talk about with you all this week. The Pokemon Presents digital presentation was last week. This past Thursday was the 29th anniversary of the release of Pokemon Red and Green version in Japan in 1996. For the last decade or so, the day has become known as Pokemon Day. This year, a special digital presentation, known as Pokemon Presents, aired as part of the festivities. And if I'm being honest, it was kind of a bare bones one this year. They are clearly holding out for the 30th anniversary next year, when a new generation of Pokemon is likely to be announced, the 10th generation. That should be an exciting one, But for now, we are working with the 29th anniversary, so we just gotta deal with it. All that being said, there were 2 pieces of news from the Direct I found particularly interesting, but I'll go over some of the lesser news real quick. First, the Pokemon Company did a rapid-fire series of small announcements of new events coming to their slate of mobile games. This is a welcome change from the usually drawn-out approach of going into all the boring facets of these microtransaction-ridden titles. They always save the big news for the end of the broadcast, knowing full well that people will sit through the advertisements to get to the good stuff. So the first exciting announcement was the unveiling of a new, traditional, turn-based, battle-focused game in the vein of Pokemon Stadium on Nintendo 64 and Pokemon Battle Revolution on Wii. The game is titled Pokemon Champions, and it will be launching on Nintendo Switch as well as Android and iOS, and it will be compatible with Pokemon Home, allowing players to import their own Pokemon into the games, much like the Game Boy Transfer Pack did on Nintendo 64 with Pokemon Stadium. Also shown in the concept trailer is each trainer using a different battle gimmick, such as Mega Evolution, Z-moves, Dynamaxing, and Terrestrializing. And that's basically all we know. The trailer is all kind of conceptual stuff, doesn't really show any actual gameplay, so here are my thoughts on what this will probably be. Since it's coming to mobile devices, I think it's likely that this game will be free to play. They will likely offer paid cosmetics and maybe even paid battle passes to get money out of people. Because it's free to play, I also question if there will be any kind of single player battle campaign or if it will be entirely focused on player versus player battles. The trailers seem to really focus on the players battling each other around the world. If there's no single player content, I don't think I'll honestly spend that much time with this game. That being said, this will probably be a really nice looking game. Since it won't have to support a full traditional Pokemon game wrapped around it, they can focus all their efforts on an amazing animations and battle move effects. I could see this becoming the definitive way that Pokemon tournament stage matches are played, so the battles feel and sound more exciting to those watching at home or in the audience. The final announcement of the show was a proper unveiling of Pokemon Legends ZA. After last year's Pokemon Day teaser trailer, we now have a look at actual gameplay, and we know more about the game's setting and time period. Given the first Legends game, Pokemon Legends Arceus, was set in pre-colonial Sinnoh, we know then known as Hisui, people assumed the next Legends game would also be set in the far-flung past. This turned out to not be true. Pokemon Legends ZA seems to be set a few years after the events of Pokemon X and Y, with the entire game taking place within the confines of the metropolis known as Lumiose City, which is inspired by World Paris. This would be the first mainline Pokemon game that doesn't take players around a region, but instead a singular urban environment. Some people are probably looking at this fact with an eyebrow raised, but I think it's potentially an exciting change of pace. Think of all the kinds of environments you do see in a big city. I mean, we could be like in the sewers, we could be in the catacombs if it's, inspired by Paris, right? There's parks, there's inside of buildings, there's different kinds of urban environments. You got like the fancy area, you got like the kind of more run down urban looking area. I don't know. I think there's promise for some, exciting developments there. Speaking of a change of pace, though, battles in Legends ZA will also be getting a significant update from the regular formula found in the series. Things were already changed up a bit in Legends Arceus, but battles will now happen in real time with trainers and Pokemon moving around the battlefield, allowing you to dodge your opponent's moves and issue your own moves in real time. The Legends games have the ability to play around with different playstyles since they're mainline games, but they're sort of separate from the Swords and Shields and the Scarlets and Violets and the Reds and Blues. Legends Arceus did some cool stuff with their boss battles, and it sounds like Legends ZA is going to try infusing that boss battle energy into every battle inside the whole game. The trailer also showcased the cast of characters you'll be interacting with, including some returning faces like AZ and his unique Eternal Flower form Floette from Pokemon X and Y. Could this finally be the game where players are able to obtain Eternal Flower Floette for themselves? I really, really hope so. Mega Evolution is also making its long-awaited return. I was hoping they might show off a new Mega Evolution or two in the trailer, but sadly they didn't reveal anything like that to us quite yet. players on Reddit and elsewhere have not been taking so kindly to the game since its announcement, referring to the game as ugly and accusing the developers of being entitled and lazy. It's no secret that the game is not a drop-dead stunner. The game is running on hardware that was created a decade ago, and it has severe limitations placed on it because of that. What were they expecting? Every ambitious Switch game has performance problems. We're just gonna have to deal with that until games start releasing for the Nintendo Switch 2. Speaking of which, there was no announcement of this game getting a native Switch 2 version at the Pokemon Presents, which makes sense as Nintendo has blocked anybody from announcing any Switch 2 games until after the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct in April. So for all we know, there's a very beautiful looking version of this game, but we won't know about it until that Direct in April at the very earliest. So keyboard warriors, lay down your arms and chill out. Patience, please. Okay, time for our final story. After more than 30 years in the business, Monolith Productions has been closed down by its parent company, Warner Brothers Games. Monolith Productions are responsible for titles like Fear, The Matrix Online, Condemned, No One Lives Forever, and Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor and Middle-earth: Shadow of War. After Shadow of War released in 2017, the company went quiet for some time, and then in 2021 announced that they were developing a new game, simply titled Wonder Woman. Behind the scenes, much of the leadership had been lost in those quiet years, and Wonder Woman was struggling to come together. Warner Brothers Games' most recent DC titles, like Suicide Squad, had been flops, and combined with the studio behind-the-scenes trouble, it just made it easier for Warner Brothers to close the studio outright. I should mention, Suicide Squad was not made by Monolith Productions, it was made by Rocksteady. Player First Games, the makers of the Super Smash Bros. Style game Multiverses, are also closing down, and the game will be taken offline, though existing players will be able to continue playing the game in an offline mode. I do respect the heck out of that. Warner Brothers San Diego, located in Carlsbad, is also closing its doors before ever having even released the game. This was a relatively new studio with promising talent behind it, such as Mortal Kombat co-creator John Tobias. Sadly, we will never get to know what they were working on. Between the three studios, at least 500 people will lose their jobs, though the actual number has yet to be made visible. So what does Warner Brothers say about all this? They issued the following statement to Kotaku. We have had to make some very difficult decisions to structure our development studios and investments around building the best games possible with our key franchises, Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Game of Thrones. After careful consideration, we are closing 3 of our development studios, Monolith Productions, Player First Games, and Warner Brothers Games San Diego. This is a strategic change in direction and not a reflection of these teams or the talent that consists within them. The development of Monolith's Wonder Woman video game will not move forward. Our hope was to give players and fans the highest chance to quality experiences possible for the iconic character. This is another tough decision, as we recognize Monolith's storied history of delivering epic fan experiences through amazing games. We greatly admire the passion of the 3 teams and thank every employee for their contributions. As difficult as today is, we remain focused on and excited about getting back to producing high-quality games for our passionate fans and developed by our world-class studios and getting our games business back to profitability and growth in 2025 and beyond. So unless I was someone working on Mortal Kombat, I wouldn't probably feel all that secure in my job at any Warner Brothers game studio. If the DC superhero games aren't a safe bet anymore, then surely Harry Potter and Game of Thrones games aren't either. Well, okay, maybe Harry Potter's a pretty safe bet. End transmission.